Minister, are personal assistance hours in further and higher education provided based on the need of the disabled person, or is there a rule within the department that there's an allocation of one personal assistant per student?
So we have a fund for students with disabilities, Deputy Tully, and this provides funding to our higher and further education institutions for the delivery of services and supports for students with disabilities. We know that. The fund is intended to assist in offering supports and services to eligible students with disabilities so they can participate on an equal basis. That funding can be used to provide support and accommodations in a range of broad categories, including non-medical helpers, personal assistants, note takers and the likes. The disability support services in the higher education institutions complete a needs assessment in respect of each student, and on completion of the needs assessment, disability support staff in the institution determine the nature and the level of supports, such as a non-medical assistance or a personal assistant required by a student, and then they can draw down from the Fund for Students with Disability to provide these supports. In further education, needs assessments determine the supports and accommodations requested for students, and then the individual ETB or the further education college is responsible for decisions on what the most appropriate support is to provide to that student. So I checked this out when I saw your question. We're not aware of the issue mentioned by the Deputy, though you may have more information, or I'm sure you do, or it's been raised by a particular institution with you, and if you were happy to share that information with me either now or after in more detail, we'll certainly examine the matter, because I want to be very clear, the entire policy rationale of the funding is that it's a needs-based approach. So, I mean, the ultimate answer to your question is it shouldn't be, I mean, it should not be that there's a rigid application of it must be this or it must be that. It's about a needs-based assessment for each student, and then the institution draws down from the fund. So I'm not aware of any such rigidity, and if there is one which you've come across, I'd be very happy to work with you on it.
Thank you, Minister. You know, it was a young man with quite complex disability. He's identified a course he's interested in doing. The college have been very accommodating in meeting and making sure the college is accessible. And actually, when you're talking about part-time courses, I think they're allowing him to take longer to do the course, which I think is something that should be considered in relation to disabled people, but also people who suffer from chronic pain. It's an issue that's been raised with me. However, he is being allocated a personal assistant to assist him in college, but when it comes to toileting, he actually requires 2 people. And that seems to be where the problem arises, in that the college apparently have been told that they're not allowed to allocate a second person. Now, this is the information that's coming from him. I can seek further information, or I can ask him if I can pass on his details to you to look at this, because it's coming to the stage where he's saying, do I take up this position? Because without the assistance of 2 people, when using the bathroom, he isn't able to actually attend and participate in the course. The college are actually building on a toilet, accessible toilet for him, because a lot of the bathrooms actually, currently disabled bathrooms in our public buildings are not large enough for the larger motorised wheelchairs, just as a point of interest as well.
I'd be very interested in following this up with you, Deputy Tully, and I'll ask my officials listening in to also expect to hear from you on this issue, because my very clear understanding, and in checking this out, is that yes, the higher education institution or the further education institution, they do determine the level of support, but they don't do it in a vacuum. They do it based on the needs assessment. So if there's a needs assessment for any students that says this is a requirement, they should be in a position to draw down from the fund. Now, I'm not blaming the college, I'm not blaming the ETB. If there's an anomaly here we need to look at, we'll do that. So I don't know the details, and you're not being critical of anybody, and I'm not trying to either. But if there's an issue here, let's look at it. But the fundamental principle is needs assessment says this is what the student requires. HEI says here's how we believe we're going to meet it, and then they seek the funding through the Fund for Students with Disabilities. So that should be the process. If there's a rigidity that I'm not aware of, or a clarification that needs to be provided, I'm happy to do so. So you might liaise with my office directly, and I'll keep a personal interest in this.
Yes, thank you, Minister. So I'll get the person's permission to give you the details and pass them on. Just another issue we've heard where sometimes there's contracts held between colleges or places of further education and the provider of the PA service, and perhaps the insurance company, which precludes the students from leaving campus during contracted hours. So again, you know, that's quite restrictive. I mean, if a student wanted to go for coffee with their friends, that they're told, no, well, you can't leave during these contracted hours that we have to pay in. and this is coming from ahead. It actually have highlighted that to me as well, so maybe it's something as well. And I know there's something in relation to PA hours. The HSE have a very strict thing around non-academic PA, so I know that's not entirely your remit as well, but it's just something that they tie it to their home county, where students often study outside their own home county, so it's just another issue as well in relation to attend, for disabled students to be able to attend college, that they would have their PA both for non-academic and academic purposes.
This is one of those questions that's been really useful in terms of providing a very valuable insight and the information that you've picked up. I'll follow up on all three issues, the specific matter you've raised, the insurance company issue and the non-academic matter. I'm not doubting what you've said at all, because you've heard it from authoritative sources, but it's kind of very frustrating to hear that you'd be having a needs-based, centred-based, student-based approach, and a student leave the campus to go for a cup of coffee with another few students because of some insurance rules. So let's keep in touch directly on this, and I'll take those three issues away.